Hey everyone, welcome to my channel where I cover topics that range from astrology and the occult to history, geopolitics, and world events. I am your counter-narrative astrologer, IYKYK. I'm also a psychic reader, healing arts practitioner, and author. Now in this video, I'm going to delve into the history of one of the world's most influential thinkers and the effects that his theories have had on civilization. Sigmund Freud has influenced modern Western culture in a multitude of ways, from shaping medicine and psychology to politics and, indirectly, spiritually related topics such as astrology. The doctrines of Freud have maintained their unyielding influence from one century to another. His theories have become so pervasive that most people don't even question their validity or how helpful or harmful they truly are. So now, let's begin. To psychoanalyze the man who popularized psychoanalysis itself, but who himself refused to be analyzed. We've all heard references to Freud's interpretation of psychology. A large percentage of the modern-day astrology community continues to refer to Freud as an authority figure in the field of psychology, despite that his ideologies encapsulate just about everything that is divisive and morally corrupt in society. Now, I believe that if more people knew about Freud's background and motivations, they would naturally begin to recognize his subversive influence on contemporary culture. It is already widely known that Freud sexualized everything that people dreamed or appeared to repress, but it is less known that he encouraged his clients to become looser sexually while also objectifying them and exploiting their weaknesses. It was no secret that Freud was quite fond of the attention he received from the women who visited his office. He held a deep contempt for Christianity, wholesomeness, and he was basically the scourge against innocence. Now that catching online pedophiles and filming them under interrogation and arrest has become more widely pursued and rightfully applauded, in my opinion, the world needs to hear this. Freud is the man who came up with the idea of infantile sexuality and who pathologized young teenage girls who resisted the sexual advances of older men, describing their rejection of such advances as forms of repression and hysteria. In fact, he implied in his Oedipus complex theory that children lusted after their parents and that despite their upbringing, any of their psychological problems stemmed from sexual inhibitions. He even went so far as to use psychoanalysis on his own daughter by prying into her sexual imagination. It was Freud who came up with the ridiculous idea of penis envy that he claimed girls and women had, suggesting that in those women who apparently did not seem to possess this envy, their wish for a penis was replaced by the wish for a baby. Furthermore, the women in Freud's office who were mildly troubled or got bored with their husbands were encouraged to have extramarital affairs, to spice things up a bit. Male followers who broke away from Freud's school of thought were criticized, and some of them were socially emasculated. When you really hone in on Freud's activities, you'll probably notice that his studies of psychoanalysis grew into a political movement rather than an attempt to assist in the remedy of psychological conflicts. It was a tool used toward an aggressive undermining of the Western family unit. He frequently used reverse psychology on his patients in that any resistance to sexual perversion on their part was interpreted by him as proof of the opposite emotion or desire. Freud used the power of suggestion to introduce ideas to his patients and justified this as a method of extracting information that would reveal their innermost secret fears and desires. He acknowledged that his technique was similar to that used in the Catholic ritual of confession. In his book, Studies on Hysteria, he said, and I quote, "One works to the best of one's own power as an elucidator, as a teacher, as the representative of a freer or superior view of the world, as a father-confessor who gives absolution, as it were, by a continuance of his sympathy and respect after the confession has been made." End of quote. More recently, the American author Jeffrey Masson was expelled from the Freudian movement due to his disagreement with the claim that female patients' reports of sexual abuse were actually fantasies disguised as false memories. Such a claim in Freud's time led to the discrediting of actual child molestation and abuse. Though Carl Jung was strongly influenced by Freud, he went on to develop his own method for analyzing psychology and the universe, and he even took up the study of astrology. Freud insisted that psychoanalysis was strictly a clinical subject without room for superstition or religious thought. Even though psychoanalysis has waned in popularity, the works of both men, but especially of Freud's, have been absorbed by society as though some kind of mixture of science and gospel. These two did consider themselves to be scientists, ultimately, and their influences are featured prominently in today's astrological world. Unlike Freud, Jung took into consideration many aspects of existence that stretch beyond the gross material world and that bring us into conscious connection with a divine presence. Freud broke down the poor ego and its mental functions into three tyrannical masters, which are identified as the external world, the superego, and the id. The Austrian neurologist Alan Esterson noticed that this was hardly a great revelation, given that similar observations had already been made by others both in a psychological and spiritual sense. It is worth asking the question as to how and why Freud's vision became more widely accepted than the others. In Freud's natal chart, the sun in Taurus reveals a sensual and obstinate nature. His Scorpio ascendant, highly secretive, and 8th house moon appear to have increased his own libido, yet Saturn's looming presence in the same house created sexual tension that he sought to release through fantasy, psychoanalysis, and projecting onto others. His chart ruler Mars formed an opposition to Jupiter, indicating the enormous drive and grandiosity present in his endeavors. Yet his retrograde Mars in Libra showed the inner feebleness of his own masculine essence that he hid so very well from the rest of the world. Again, I'll say that even though psychoanalysis is rarely used today as it was several decades ago, its subversive ideology has seeped into the collective in ways that have led to an increase of violent reactivity, social unrest, and a highly confused youth culture. It would be really great if we stopped referring to Freud and his twisted terminology for every little subconscious and verbal slip-up, every fear, every nightmare, and every family-related complication that arises. The truth is that there are many reasons for people's mental processes and emotional imbalances that range from the physical to the spiritual. Freud's suggestion that becoming sexually loose is a cure for so-called neurosis or emotional trauma that for most people is likely the result of being raised in a broken home is utterly insane. In my opinion, Freud's indoctrination has become a destructive cancer to Western society, if not all of modern civilization.